2. All right, welcome back. We are ACI Course 13, Class 8. Can you believe it? It's July 6, 2026, where I am. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do, please. Excuse me. Bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And see them there with you. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you, smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiates from them, that beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize that the worldly ways we try to help fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. Deep down, we know this is possible. Learning more and more about emptiness and dependent origination, we glimpse how it's possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing. And that longing into an intention. And with that intention strong, we turn our minds back to our precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet, to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please, 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 Teach us that. Show us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the pure world. They are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands. And we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer to make our promise. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with the blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirya Tayoni. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community, through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest. May we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community, through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest. May we realize Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community, through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest. May all beings totally awaken for the benefit of every single other. Last class, we were working on contradictions and relationships, meaning things that are in contradictory relationships or things that are in relationships that are not contradictory. And it's hard to wrap our minds around the significance of that. And yet it really, every one of these pieces is significant to helping us plant the seeds necessary to become more and more clear and accurate in our understanding of how every perception that we have that seems to be accurate and correct and valid and real isn't like that, but not that they aren't at all. And so everything about Course 13 is about helping us better understand emptiness and dependent origination. And it just doesn't seem like it when you're digging through all the words and the definitions and the explanations. But all together, right? It's planting amazing seeds in our minds that I hope you'll be able to recognize and really and use someday. Anyway, so let's review. Contradictions. We learned there are 2 conditions necessary for 2 things to be contradictory to each other. And then the first of those 2 things is they have to both exist, and they have to be separate things, and they have to be distinct from each other. That sure seems like 3 things. but it's called one thing, which that alone is another like clue, one or many things. So for two things to be in contradiction, they need to be existing things. They need to be separate things. And they need to be distinct from one another, meaning you can tell the difference. But that's not enough for them to be contradictory. There has to also be no one thing that can be both of them, right? And it's like, duh, they're two different things. Yeah, but if there's a third thing that can be both, then those two aren't, you can't possibly say they're in contradiction if there's one thing that is both of them. And it's like, well, in the real world, there isn't one thing that's both. If the two things can't be there at the same time. Right, I know, they say. But watch, like when we start paying attention to how we're thinking, anyway, it will reveal itself. So, second quiz question. Name and give one example each of two kinds of contradiction. So we learned there's the contradiction of mutually exclusive and the contradiction of diametrically opposed. The example for the contradiction that's mutually exclusive is a working thing and a thing which does no work. Mutually exclusive because they're opposites. You state two things that are opposites and you can't have them both at the same time. And there can't be one that's both of them because they're opposites. Like, duh. Then the contradiction that's diametrically opposed. I'm having speaking trouble, I'm hearing. If that gets worse through the class, would somebody like say, Sorani, because, right, I need to do something. Okay, second one. Contradictions that are diametrically opposed. The example Geshe-la gave us is a spiritual antidote and the negative personal quality that we're trying to eliminate. So we've got this bad habit, we want to get rid of it. So we apply the antidote behavior. When we're doing the antidote behavior, we cannot be doing the habit that we're wanting to get rid of. As soon as we stop the antidote behavior, very likely the old habit comes back. But you can't have them happening at the same time. The antidote necessarily pushes out the bad habit. And then if we're doing the bad habit, you can't be doing the antidote. That one's gone. Next, name and give one example each of two types of relationships. So that was contradictions, those two first questions. Now we're talking about two types of relationships. We had the relationship of identity and the relationship of effects and the causes from which they came. The identity of relationship is explained as the relationship where to be one is to automatically be the other. The example, a working thing, and the example, the example was Chevy and motor vehicle. A Chevy is automatically a motor vehicle. Is a motor vehicle necessarily a Chevy? No. So it's a one-way relationship. Chevys have relationship with motor vehicle. But then would we say motor vehicles have no relationship with Chevy? No, it's not no relationship at all. It's just bigger. Motor vehicle is bigger than Chevrolet, so you can't say to be one thing is to be the other. But it's not to say that there's no relationship at all. Second, the relationship of effects and the causes from which they came. They describe this as the relationship in which one of the two comes from the other. And remember, we talked about the word order, the precision of word order, because we tend to say, oh, the law of cause and effect. And yet, what we really have to be talking about is the effects, the results, and then the causes from which they came. Because there are no causes. A cause is not a cause until it has brought about the result that does come about. So you can't really say it's a cause until you have the result. But when you have the result, you don't have the cause anymore. It's done its thing. It's changed in some way. But because we have the result, we can say the cause had to have done its thing. So to be precise about this relationship of this kind of relationship between two things, we have to be talking about the result and then the cause from which it came, instead of saying the cause and the result that comes from it, because it may not ever happen, the result. And if it never happens, then we're incorrect in calling the thing the cause. So the cause and the effect from which it came. And the example is that slippery thing, the working thing in the moment after, and the original working thing. Meaning now we're talking cause and effect as just being, right, this object marching through time. And here's our friend the pen right now. If we call that the result, we're talking about what the thing was the moment before. But if we're talking about this pen right now as the cause for the pen in the next moment, that's where we say, well, this is gonna be the cause for the pen of the next moment, but it's not yet. So when you're describing, you have to say the pen of the next moment and the pen that was the one that flopped into that. It's really it's like, why go to all of these semantics? It's just it's to get our mind recognizing the imprecision of our usual communicating, and how when we really get clear, whether we do it while we're talking with other people, I don't know, but in our own thinking, to get really precise will help us grow the ability to be so precise we can come to see where things are really coming from. Okay. Next quiz question. Name two types of correct reason to prove the absence of something. So we learned that there was a correct reason for the absence of something that is imperceptible, and there are correct reasons for absences of things that are perceptible. And again, it's like, why bother with that? And in one, well, anyway, so the ultimate application for those kind of reasons to prove an absence, is to prove to ourselves that just because we may not perceive a particular good quality in another person, another being, it does not prove that they lack that good quality. So to learn about proving absences helps us show ourselves the absence of the things being what we think they are, or the absence of what we don't think is there that maybe could be. All right, that's clear. So now this class is about definitions and the things that they define. Definitions and the things that they define. How do we define things? We get the dictionary, we look the word up, the dictionary tells us what it is, right? What's the definition of? And it's like, no, that's not what we're talking about. If you're looking out into a scene and the scene's got so much visual and auditory information that it takes a little bit for you to like zero in on what you're actually looking at. Just a huge crowd of people. And then as you look more carefully, oh, there's so-and-so. Oh, there's, right? Things are starting to come into focus. They're becoming delineated. They're becoming identified. They're becoming defined. Right? You didn't look it up in the dictionary. How do we define things? Like deeper meaning underneath this class has to do with that. How do we tell the difference between things? But when we're talking about how to define things, we get these specific words about defining that seems so obvious, like we learned all this in first grade or something, but we kind of need to revisit it. And then okay, so here we go. If we're going to have a discussion with someone, where we're trying to understand something better together, or suppose we're even trying to change somebody's mind, and we say, well, let's consider this topic, and you make an assertion about the topic, and then you give a reason about the topic. And what if the original topic, you're thinking of it in one way, and they're thinking of it in a different way? And then we can't understand why the person doesn't recognize that our syllogism is perfect. You know, that it really proves what we're saying about the topic. And they can't understand why you can't understand that they're saying, no, your syllogism doesn't make sense, because their definition of the original topic is different than our definition of the original topic. So even in classic debate, usually the first thing you'll do is clarify the definition of the topic at hand, the definitions of what you're referring to in your assertion, and the definitions of what you're referring to in your reason, so that you can be sure that everybody involved is on the same page from the beginning. We don't do that in life. We assume that the person we're talking to, if they speak my same language, that we mean the same thing. And we don't start a conversation with, consider, I can't even think of an example, consider going to Chinese food. Do we agree what it means to go to Chinese food? And it's like for David and I, it would automatically mean we're going to go to that particular restaurant in our neighborhood because we could walk there. It's actually closed. We can't anymore. But like he would know when I said, let's go for Chinese, I would mean, let's go to House of Chen, not just any old Chinese, because I'm assuming that he knows what I'm talking about, because we've done it 100 times. But what if I'm talking about my friend from down, from across town? Let's go for Chinese food. I show up at House of Chen. They show up at their favorite one across town. Where are you, Sarani? What's the matter with you? Because we didn't clarify our terms, right? We didn't define what Chinese restaurant are you talking about? Thank you very much. We make all these assumptions. When we're debating the ACI material, Geshe Michael says, we all assume that we've all learned the ACI curriculum, and so we know what we're talking about when we say, oh, mental seeds. But you take that outside the arena of your co-ACI students, and it's like, what? What are you talking about planting seeds? I don't even have a garden. So it's important to know how to clarify what we're talking about, and then to recognize that it's important to clarify what we're talking about. So if we're going to take the time to do it, we want to do it accurately. So it's this topic of Sen Sun. Sen means definition. Sun means the thing to be defined. And it's short for Seni Sunja. Seni means the definition of something. Like the definition of a working thing is that which performs a function. The Tsunja is the thing that's getting defined. In our definition of a working thing, the thing that's getting defined is the working thing. The definition of a working thing is that which performs a function. So if we're going to talk about working things, we need to be sure that we both understand what working things means, what they are. So in order to clarify whatever topic of consideration we're going to do, we want to define it. And in order to define it, we need to know how to make a definition that in fact does define it. Because a sloppy or inactive definition just confuses the picture. But an accurate definition clarifies something precise. So there are 3 qualities that a good definition must have, or 3 qualities that a definition must have in order to be a good definition for the thing we are defining. The Tsen-Ni and Sunja relationship, there needs to be these 3 qualities, 3 things complete. So Zeya Chusum Songwa. Chusum means these 3 qualities. Sungwa means complete, meaning they're included in our definition. 3 qualities need to be included in the definition for the definition to be the definition of the thing that we are defining. But what's this Zeyu thing? Those 3 qualities need to be Zeyu. And Geshe said it's a really difficult word to understand. Literally, it means having material existence. So 3 materially existent qualities complete for a definition to be the actual definition. And all of a sudden it's like, what? 3 material qualities? Just look the word up in the dictionary. It'll tell you the definition. There's no material qualities in there. It's just words. So we need to understand what they mean by Zeyu beyond the literal translation. To do so, we look at Dayu, which is the opposite of Zeyu. Zeyu is material existence. Dayu means conceptual existence. Things that exist only conceptually, meaning nominally, meaning an idea, meaning made by the mind, versus Zeyu, which is the thing that the conceptualization is about, or maybe the information that the conceptualization is about. So remember that we are speaking from perspective of logic school. In logic school, what we perceive with a valid perception exists. So if we're having a valid perception of our friend the pen, that's what establishes our friend this pen to exist right now. They say, remember also that these lower schools are functionalist schools. So anything that we perceive as performing a function has some reality of its own, not self-existent, because they all depend on their causes, their conditions, their parts. Come on. Nobody thinks they exist independently of anything else. But to say the pen is just my projection, come on, that's silly. It's here. It has its causes. It has its parts. I can use it. Functionalist school. These things are here. Okay? So we're exploring this. What do they mean by material existence versus conceptual existence? In order to better understand why or what these 3 material qualities a definition has to have in order to be the definition of the thing. Are you with me? So logic school says this term Zeyu is describing a material thing, is something that we can perceive straight without first perceiving all its parts and then conceptualizing it in a certain way. We just perceive it. Like the things that we perceive, I want to say directly. Geshe didn't use that word, but things that we perceive directly without taking that information and coming up with its identity and qualities. Highest school says there's nothing that we experience in that way except emptiness. When we do experience ultimate reality, it will be direct. Everything else in our experience is information receiving a label. So, yes, there's information that's direct, but even to recognize it as a direct experience of the information, that's a conceptualization happening. So we need to stay in logic school where we do directly perceive the information that our sense organs provide. So when they're talking about perceiving something straight, Geshe used the word straight. I'm going to use the word directly. It means the color and or shape that the eyeball picks up. That's the direct experience. The mind then does something with that information and it puts on a conceptualization. So we get information from our eyes, direct perception from eyeball. Not that we're seeing the blue sky, simply that we're seeing blue. But then it's not even seeing blue, it's that we're picking up that particular vibration, and then the mind would call it blue if it needed to give it a word. The direct perception is just the sensory information that we're getting. We get visual information. We get auditory information, just the decibels. We get olfactory, right? There's like hardly even a word, odor. Before it's identified an odor of what? Just odor. Taste. Tactile. And then they say, we also have this direct perception of our mind in awareness, like an instant of being aware, not aware of what yet, but just aware. That's this direct experience of our mind. So we were saying before, oh, material things, what I see, hear, smell, taste, touch, not the identity of the thing yet, just the information. That's material, direct experience. But it can also happen, we can have this material experience of our mind. Our mind's not material, but we have this direct experience of it before some kind of label. Really subtle, but it's there. So we don't want to mistake our understanding of this thing, Zeyu, as only meaning our outer reality, because there's also moments of Zeyu, of mental things. Okay. So Zeyu, that they call material existence, has this meaning of to experience a thing without having to perceive its separate parts and then conceptualize what it is. Tayu is that things only have, is when we recognize our experience of the thing is nominal, meaning that those are the things that we must first perceive their various parts. We first perceive their Zeyu, And then our minds put those parts together to come up with our experience of them, our ideas of them. So Geshe said, consider car. If I just say car, is that a physical thing, a mental thing, or one of those working things that is neither physical nor mental? Demen duje. Just car. Yeah, it's slippery, right? It's an idea. And we can't help but, I mean, my own mind starts going like, this one, that one, what's she talking about? Because car is too non-specific. It's very clear, but it's non-specific. But if I say, think a car, something different pops into our mind, right? Unique to each one of us. But with this commonality of the idea car, because if we didn't know what car was, it wouldn't matter whether I said think car or think a car. You'd be going, what the heck are you talking about? So think Sarani. Is Sarani a physical thing, a mental thing, or one of those working things, changing things that's neither? We've learned Sarani isn't the body alone. It isn't the mind alone. It is a concept based on the appearance of those two things we think, but it's an idea in our mind that is applied to this other information that we get. So technically, to come up with Sarani, that depends on perceiving a physical body, whether it's in our memory, our mind, right, our actual experience. We see something about that physical body that somehow indicates to us that it has awareness, which means that we assume it has a mind. We can't directly experience that mind, but we can directly experience that the information reveals to me that that body has consciousness. And then somehow the Sarani informs us of that identity. Sarani is the concept. Technically, so is body, so is mind. By the time we get there, those are concepts too. Concepts that relate to a physical thing, concepts that relate to a mental thing. The concepts is this dayu, the information the mind is using to come up with the concept. Those are zeyu. They call it material existence, but do you see how the word material existence is not right? But in trying to explore the difference between these two, it's actually the accurate word to use, material versus conceptual. Geshe says these two concepts, Zeyu and Tayu, they come up again and again, not so much exactly in their words, but in this idea of the information getting a label. Sounds really familiar since we've already been trained in the punchline. The information is the Zeyu. Even when the information is mental information, awareness. Tayu is the conceptualization, the idea. Are ideas tangible things that you can put in a candy bowl and people can eat? No. Ideas are these intangible things. But which one makes the reality? The direct sensory information that is unyet identified? Or is it the conceptualization that makes the identity? When does fire become fire? So that's why we're talking about this in this way. How do you define things in a way that actually defines them? It sounds so simplistic, but how do we actually experience the things that we do? That's where all this information is leading eventually. If I can just get there. All right. So, what does it all have to do with definitions and things that they define? We said for a definition to be an accurate definition for the thing we're trying to define, that definition must have these three material qualities complete. Another way to say it, this definition must have these three substantial qualities. Another way to say it, these definitions must have these three directly perceived qualities complete. Things that we directly perceive out of the definition. We don't have to think about it. The words of the definition say very clearly, this is what's being defined. Material qualities, meaning things we perceive without having to conceptualize. To be a good definition, the definition needs to give information directly that we don't have to conceptualize. It sounds crazy. Like we conceptualize everything. How can there ever be a good definition? But wait, it's coming. We're unpacking it. So what are these three directly perceivable qualities that our definition has to have? Here they are. Chir tsene yimpa, rangi sen shi tendu drupa, and shengi tseni mayimpa. Chir tsene yimpa. Yimpa means it is. Chir means generally. So the first direct non-conceptual quality is, generally speaking, the definition needs to sound like a definition. We need to be able to recognize it as a definition without having to think about it. Is that the definition? Or you just hear it's like, oh, that's a definition. Ta-da. It's like we're being so precise. And this first really precise thing, it just has to sound like a definition. I really do think this is the funniest thing. Amongst the funniest things. Geshe-la's example. Consider the definition of a working thing. The definition of a working thing is that which performs a function. Versus, let me give you the definition of a working thing. I took a shovel and I dug a hole. You see the difference? I took a shovel and dug a hole does define a working thing. Multiple working things. Me, the shovel, right? I used a tool to affect a change on the earth there. That defines, that reveals, that shows us what it is to be a working thing. But our mind had to think all of that through to come up with what I meant by, let me define for you a working thing. That would not qualify as a good definition for working thing because it means we have to think things through to figure it out. A definition should be automatically identified. She's talking about a definition. That's what they mean by direct. A quality of a definition is that it's recognizable as a definition. The definition of a working thing is that which performs a function. But is that enough? I could say, here's a definition for you. A thing which is hot and burning. And it's like, well, wait, that is defining something. It is telling you the qualities of something through which you should be able to recognize it. But it could be a hot coal. It could be the element on your stove. It could be all kinds of things. It doesn't automatically say I'm talking about fire. So it's not enough to just sound like a definition. That's only one of these Zeyud Chusum. The second one, Rangi Senshi Dendu Drupa. Rangi means its own. Senshi means classic example, more accurately, definitive example. Dendu means it should apply. So this definition needs to have the additional quality of giving a definitive example that applies to the definition. So when we're working with definitions, we have the definition, the tseni. We have the senja, the thing to be defined. And we have the senshi, this word here, which is a definitive example. The example we give for our definition of a defined thing is a thing that must apply to the definition, they say perfectly. So the example is, consider a working thing. The definition of a working thing is that which performs a function. For example, a water pitcher. A water pitcher is our Tsen Shiyi, our definitive example for the thing that we are defining, that our definition must apply to. Now, what if I had said, consider working thing, it is a thing which performs a function, for example, water pitcher. That actually would not be a definitive example because water pitcher is an idealization. A water pitcher is the thing we're talking about. Does a water pitcher fit our definition, a thing that performs a function? Yeah. We know about water pitchers that they hold water, that we can pour water from them or anything, any substance that we put inside. They hold something and you can pour. So a water pitcher does fit the criteria for a thing that performs a function. And so it is a definitive example for working thing. But to just say water pitcher doesn't qualify. Well, the idea water pitcher is a changing thing. Wait, no, maybe not. So again, our speech needs to be precise. So now we have two of these material qualities that a definition must have to be a good definition. It sounds like a definition. And there is a definitive example that reveals that definition. The third one, Sen Gitseni Mayimpa. Sen means other thing. Mayimpa is there's not. So the definition that Senyi cannot be a definition for any other thing. If a definition can define different things, not meaning a working thing, here's a pen, here's a water pitcher, here's a bicycle, but meaning some other quality of workingness that that ends up being described in our definition, then our definition is too imprecise to actually be a definition. A definition means this is how we identify something. And if the way we identify something could include things that are not similar, then our definition is not a definition. And we tend to make definitions that are too fuzzy, include too many different kinds, right, of things. And the other person gets confused, or we even get confused. Or maybe they're doing that, and so we're the ones that get confused. Communication is difficult. Like that which is hot and burning. It defines all kinds of different hot things. It's too fuzzy to be a good definition for anything. That which is wet and flowing. And Geshe-la brings it up because we hear when we're talking about the 5 elements that make up the body, earth, fire, earth, water, fire, wind, consciousness, the definitions of fire, that which is hot and burning, water, that which is wet and flowing. But it's wait, I could say that which is wet and flowing, and I could be talking about lemonade. It's not specific enough to make me know water unless I've had the class on that which is wet and flowing means water. But it wouldn't if I go out to somebody who hasn't had that class. We need to be more specific. So our definition, it needs to define our topic, and it needs to not define any other thing. It can't apply to anything beyond our topic of consideration. Our wording needs to be precise. Like, remember when we were defining takpa versus mi takpa? Takpa, unchanging. Mi takpa, not unchanging. And then we had this discussion about, does takpa mean unchanging? And it's like, no, actually, it has to, the definition of takpa has to be a thing, an existing thing, which is such that it's not changing moment by moment. Because to just say unchanging is too vague to really clarify what unchanging means. The horn on the head of a rabbit, is that unchanging? It's like, well, it's non-existent, so you can't say. But what about my Aunt Mary's gray hair? It's like, we don't even know whether I have an Aunt Mary, so you don't know whether she's got gray hair or not. But if I did and I knew, it would be clear for me, but it wouldn't be clear for you. So there's reason for precision in our definitions. So here's these three necessary, directly perceivable qualities that need to be in a definition for it to be the definition that we've intended it to be. It has to sound like a definition. There has to be a definitive example that we can give, and it has to not define anything else. All right? So now, similarly, when we are looking at the thing to be defined, it also has three qualities. Let's take our break and we'll dig into the three qualities of the thing to be defined. Are you back? Okay. So we're talking about the thing to be defined. The first quality, it also needs to fit within this Zeyu Chisum Sangwa. So its first consideration is, generally speaking, the thing to be defined needs to be a thing which can be defined. Technically, every existing thing can sooner or later be defined in some way. And Geshe-la says even a definition of a thing can be defined. That's what we're doing. We're defining definitions. And then you could define that one too. And you can go on. Secondly, the thing that we are defining should apply to the example. It should be it should be typical of the example. So we said we're defining working thing. Working thing is that which performs a function, and the example we gave was water pitcher. Water pitcher, we automatically know as a working thing because we know what water pitchers do, which is why it fit as the example for the definition. But here, does water pitcher fit as the example for the thing to be defined, which is a working thing? Do we know water pitchers as working things? I don't know. We would have to say, well, maybe working thing means some physical body performing on some material thing and making the material thing do something. Like you could make a case for saying water pitchers are not working things because all by themselves, they don't do anything. They require some living being to impact them to make them do something. They don't go there. They say, no, we do know a water pitcher as characteristic of working thing, just as we knew water pitcher was characteristic of that which performs a function, so that it fit the definitive example of the definition. It has, the water pitcher has to fit both the definition and the thing we are defining. Otherwise, it's not a definitive example. So we should be able to recognize that the typical example is the thing we're trying to define. If I had said working thing, a thing that performs a function, for example, the idea water pitcher. It's like the idea water pitcher doesn't do anything, can't do anything, won't ever do anything. So it's not a definitive example for either the definition or the thing we're trying to define. But without that word, when I say a water pitcher, it would be meaningless. So third factor is the thing to be defined should not be, cannot be, a thing defined by any other definition in order for the thing to be defined to be being defined by our definition. Right? The thing being defined needs to be specific to the definition. So we have these three qualities of a good definition that we called the three material qualities, things that we perceive without having to conceptualize. And then we have the definition of the thing to be defined. And that also needs these three qualities. And those three qualities are called the three conceptual qualities. So when we are defining the thing to be defined, we don't say Zeyu Chisum Sangwa, we say Tayu Chisum Sangwa. And it's like, that's backwards. Because the thing to be defined is the water pitcher. That's not conceptual, that's material. But the definition that we use to clarify what we mean by water pitcher, that's conceptual, that's not material. Come on, you've got it backwards. Geshe-la says, I don't know why they do that. But then he goes to explain. So let's get it accurate. When we make our definition, the definition needs to have these three directly perceivable qualities to it that don't require conceptualization to reveal its meaning. And the thing that's getting defined needs to have these three conceptualized things through which the thing to be defined can get defined. It seems as if the thing we are defining is more material than the definition of it. But he says maybe we are defining fire, for example, as the concept fire. And the definition of it, the thing which is hot and burning, is the tangible, material, sensory experience of it. So if I said, how do we define fire? And we say, let's look it up in the dictionary. The dictionary gives us the definition of fire. Would that necessarily mean that, okay, so suppose, Martian named Martin has first arrived on Earth and doesn't know anything about Earth. And you say, be careful of fire. And he goes, what's fire? Define fire. And you go, here's the dictionary. You look it up, fire. That which is hot and burning. But Martian Martin doesn't know what hot and burning is. Does the definition, by way of the words, help Martian Martin avoid getting burnt? No, because he doesn't know. So if you want to define fire for our friend, we would take him to the campfire and point out, right, the yellow, red thing that's going with the wood and say, here, get your hand close. Closer, closer, closer. You feel that? Yes. Fire. Have we defined fire for Mr. Martian? Yes. Did we need the words out of the dictionary? No. The words out of the dictionary were not the definition. That was the idea. The direct experience is the definition. It does not require words. It requires direct experience. So when we're talking the definition of something, we're talking direct experience. When we're talking the thing to be defined, oh, that's, the result of combustibility, whatever the dictionary says about fire. Our dictionary says that which is hot and burning. That's meaningless until we've experienced hot and burning. So do you see, it's like backwards to what we're thinking. The material definition is the experience of something. The thing that's being defined is the conceptualization. Okay, Mr. Martian, this is what we call fire. That's just an idea. The word fire does not make us get burnt. The idea of fire does not make us get burnt. A fire, whether we have the idea or have the word, I have to say that again. A fire, even if we don't have the word for it, but we have the experience of it, will burn us. And then we put the word on, oh, fire. But we already had the conceptualization. I can't give a word yet. So the definition is more the experience. No, the definition is the identification. And then the object to be identified is the conceptualization. What we now know is fire. Got defined by the direct experience fire is what we're trying to say. Somehow, when we're making our definition, our word definition of fire, we want it to be precise enough so that when the person actually experiences fire, they go, oh, that's what she was talking about. Versus experiencing something else hot that's not fire. My definition doesn't apply to that. It applies only to fire. So fire, the thing to be defined, needs to have these qualities. And the definition of fire needs to have qualities, and those need to match up in order for us to be able to communicate clearly with other things. So Geshe said, maybe it's like the thing we are defining is the chi, the general, and the way it is defined is more specific, is revealing the chitta, more specific sensory experience of it. Geshe-la's example is like if you were standing with a friend and looking out and you go, wow, look, there's a fire over there. Your friend is likely going to go, oh, where? But what if your friend didn't know fire and they said, fire? What's fire? How would you respond? Oh, fire. What's fire? Hey, you would go, well, see over there? There's smoke and there's that yellow and orange thing and there's people buzzing all around and there's fire trucks. See that? We call that flame, and that flame is what we call fire. And it makes smoke and it damages things. Mostly, sometimes we use it to intentionally damage things. Sometimes, right? There's all kinds of stuff. Story we would tell that person about fire. But we point it out. And now they know what we're talking about. Whereas if they already know what fire is, they're just going to go, oh, where? What do you mean? Defining fire is bringing a person to experience it. The object that gets defined is the conceptualization that they get in their mind about it. And that's what seems so opposite. It seems like the thing to be defined, fire, is what they experience, and they do. But that's how the fire gets its definition. And what gets defined is a conceptualization. It's so beautifully slippery, but it's such an important clue. Geshe-la said, in this school, Takpa, a thing which is unchanging, an existing thing which is unchanging, and Tayu, things which have only nominal existence, are synonyms. And he said, cook it, right? When he says cook it, it means this one's a clue. Think about it. Takpa, an existing thing which is unchanging, and Tayu, things which have only nominal existence, are synonyms. Okay, so when we're talking about the thing to get defined, we still need to give this example, an example, and the example that we give needs to combine both the qualities of being the thing defined and the quality of the definition. So when we're defining something and we're considering the thing that's being defined, we need to find a definitive example that fits both of those in order to show that our definition is a definition for the thing that we're trying to define. The example shows that these two have a relationship of some kind, which is why we learned all about relationships before. So for existence, for example, we are working with the thing to be defined working thing. And our definition of working thing is that which performs a function. And our example is a water pitcher. A water pitcher is both a working thing, the thing to be defined, and a thing which performs a function. Right? So that verifies that our definition of a working thing as a thing which performs a function has at least this one thing that reveals that that definition of a working thing is accurate. So Geshe-la said, remember when we were kids, we played this game I'm thinking of with your brother? And it's like, I'm thinking of something green and white. And the brother's supposed to go, oh, it's the street sign. No. Oh, it's your shoelace. Yeah, you got it. So he said, okay, let's play I'm thinking of. I'm going to give you a definition for something. And you tell me from the definition what it is we're defining, because we should be able to do it. So here's the phrase. Sardu meluwe shepa, ganshik tokdrau ma truwe shepa. Sardu meluwe shepa means a state of mind, shepa, which is fresh and unerring. Fresh and unerring. Bye-bye. I love you. Drive safely, please. A state of mind which is fresh and unerring. And Tokdrau Matruwe Shepa is a state of mind, Shepa, which is Tokdrau, free of conceptualization, and ma true way unmistaken. Ganshik means both. So here's the definition. I am talking about something which is a state of mind which is fresh and unerring and free of conceptualization and unmistaken. So I've given you these four qualities, two and two. A state of mind which is fresh and unerring, and a state of mind free of conceptualization and unmistaken. And I'm saying something that I'm defining something that has both those four qualities, both those four qualities, right? Those two groups of qualities. What am I talking about? So I'll give you a minute to think about. State of mind which is fresh and unerring, and a state of mind which is free of conceptualization and unmistaken. Anybody have a guess? Chris has a guess. Did you write it? I didn't see.
Joanna got it in the chat.
Oh, she did. Oh my gosh.
I was applauding her.
Yay. Direct, valid perception. So let's unpack that. How did Joanna come up with direct, valid perception? We know that the Sardu Maluwe, Shepa, state of mind that is fresh and unerring, that establishes a valid perception, right? According to logic school. So we have part of the thing that's getting defined is a valid perception. But then the definition also says free of conceptualization, which makes it direct. That's what we've been talking about, the difference between direct experience and conceptualization. The direct experience being the tactile, auditory, right? Just the information that we are receiving. And then the conceptualization happens instantly, of course. And then technically higher school is saying, you're always conceptualizing, you're never not. But we're talking about the data. Data first, then label. Even highest school says, yeah, you can think of it that way. It's just that when you go looking for the data, you're going to find the same thing happening. Subtle data getting a label. And then when you keep pushing it, you go, wow, that can't be happening sequentially over a moment of time, but it is happening. And that's when we start to get it a little bit more clearly. So the conceptualization, free of conceptualization, then is talking about when we are picking up simply the information, which is what we've been talking about as what we mean by the direct, which they're calling zeyu, that material part. But you see, it does not mean material as in matter. It means the experience, the direct experience before the conceptualization, just a fraction of an instant before. So the fresh, unerring state of mind plus free of conceptualization and unmistaken, when you put those two together, you recognize, oh my gosh, that's what this is talking about, is direct, valid perception, not just valid perception and not just direct perception. Why not just direct perception? Because we can have an experience of something, but the the experience is not accurate to the information. Their classic example is if you're looking at an object and you press your eyeballs, you will see two of those objects. And if that direct experience of two objects is correct, then when you stop pressing, there should still be two objects there. But of course, they're not. And there never is two objects. It just looks like there's two objects. And we would say, well, I had a direct experience of two objects. So there were two objects there at that moment. And the school says, no, there was only one object ever. So the experience of two objects was direct, but it was not correct. Right? It was free of conceptualization, but it was mistaken. So it takes all four of those factors, the fresh and unerring, to be a valid perception, and free of conceptualization and unmistaken to be the direct. And together, you then have a definition for a direct valid perception. As opposed to just valid perception, as opposed to just direct perception, right? The Matrue Shepa non-conceptualized state of mind means direct perception of something. And Milue is the unerring or valid state of mind. Fresh unerring means we are not having a memory. Because remember, in logic school, to be having a memory of something, they say that's not a valid perception of what was going on at the time of your memory. Yes, you're having the experience, but you're not experiencing, right, that event. Highest school says, but you are in the moment experiencing a thing called memory. It does not in any way confirm whether that thing we call memory actually ever happened. There's no way to confirm that. But it is a valid perception to have a perception of memory right now. Lower school says, no, that's not a valid perception. It is an experience you're having, yes, but it doesn't qualify as a valid perception. Higher school says, yes, it does. So even as we define these terms, still, it's like the definitions shift as we get higher in our understanding or more subtle in our understanding, which is why part of our defining things would need to include clarification of what school are we talking about. And we're getting to the level in our ACI training that, when Geshe-la says, ask the question, is it like this or is it like that? That our first question should be, what school are we in? Because it's going to make a difference. And if we're all assuming we're in highest school, then maybe we're missing a piece of what he's trying to teach us. Or maybe we're assuming we're all in highest school, but then we walk out of class and have some mental affliction meltdown, which means we are nowhere close to being in highest school. So it's fun to explore these things. And it's hard to keep the wrong hat on because we don't want to do it. But it's really useful. All right. So there are two goals of making a good definition. One of them is mitun selwa, and the other is loktok selwa. Rik mitun selwa. Selwa means to eliminate. Rik mitun is a dissimilar. A definition needs to eliminate or disqualify things that are dissimilar to the thing that is defined. Our definition should point out things that are not it. And then secondly, the loktoksawa, our definitions should help us eliminate wrong ideas. Loktok, like lokta, wrong ideas. The definition needs to help us eliminate wrong ideas about the thing defined. So the terms of our definition should address common mistaken ideas about the thing that we are defining. So he's pointing out that a good definition has both of these goals, because then when we use it, the person we're using it for, ourselves or somebody else, gets a better understanding of the thing we're trying to define. So Geshe-la says an example would be if we give a Westerner, a person new to studying Buddhism, a definition of nirvana, we might say it is the permanent cessation of all mental afflictions due to what we have learned by our direct perception of emptiness. And it is not that you just disappear into some twilight zone. Because we maybe understand that some people think nirvana is you just sit down onto your cushion and go into this state of peace and never get off your cushion again. You just disappear into some peaceful space. And it's not that. Did we hear that when we learned the definition of nirvana? No. But a good definition of nirvana for the audience at hand should or can include this additional piece of information to help them think, oh, I was thinking nirvana was just this, just zoom out state of mind. And I guess maybe I was mistaken, to help us understand. Geshe-la says, don't change the definition by doing it, but clarify the definition by adding other pieces to your definition. We are encouraged to do that. He said, for instance, if we were to define emptiness to someone as emptiness is the absence of a self-existent thing, we could add, and it's not that you just try to blank your mind out. If you believed or understood that that's what they thought it was. So let's check our definition of direct valid perception to see if it meets these two goals. Does it show us what does it show us to disallow things that could be mistaken for it? And how does it clarify specific wrong ideas about the thing we are defining? What are we defining? Direct, valid perception. How does our definition disallow things that we might think are direct, valid perception but aren't? And how does it clarify what's meant by direct, valid perception in case we're misunderstanding it? So our definition is a fresh, unerring state of mind that is non-conceptual and unmistaken. So we have these four pieces that we can look at to see whether they disallow dissimilars, disallow something mistaken about it, or clarifies wrong ideas. We have fresh, we have unerring, we have non-conceptual, and we have unmistaken. So let's see. What other states of mind are there besides direct, valid perception? There's indirect valid perception. Valid perceptions that we come to through logic, through scriptural authority, maybe other ways that we hold to be valid that end up not being valid. What are other states of mind besides direct valid perception? Invalid perceptions. So our definition of direct valid perception should be able to help us exclude indirect valid perceptions and invalid perceptions. And I suppose it should also help us exclude no perceptions at all. Although Geshe-la didn't go there, but that would be the third factor. So when we say an unerring state of mind, let's start there. Like quality number 2 that it gives, an unerring state of mind. Which of these two factors does it help us recognize? Does it help us identify Does it help us disallow something else? Or does it clarify a wrong idea? Does it help us recognize we're not talking about indirect valid perceptions or invalid perceptions? An unerring state of mind? It should disqualify invalid perceptions, right? What about direct or indirect? Unerring. It must be valid. It doesn't really say too much about indirect or direct, does it? So it helps us eliminate invalid perceptions. Because in this school, to perceive something unerringly means to perceive it in the way it is. One pen, not two, even though it seems like I'm seeing two pens. So the unerring piece shows us that it's disallowing another type of perception, invalid perception, from our definition. What does fresh help us with? Fresh helps us eliminate valid perceptions, which are memories in this school. Memories are not direct valid perceptions, they're memories. Something we are remembering. It's not happening right now. What does free of conceptualization help us with? It eliminates deductive valid perception from this definition. And it also clarifies or eliminates the wrong idea that perceptions that require conceptualization could be direct. So this term, free of conceptualization, serves both of the definition's goals. Helps eliminate a wrong idea and clarify the correct idea. Then why do we need the fourth? to repeat unmistaken. We had it before in unerring. Why does our free of conceptualization need to be unmistaken? If free of conceptualization means direct, how can it be mistaken? But here is the word unmistaken. So to add that word unmistaken, free of conceptualization, helps address the wrong idea that people might have that direct perceptions are always correct. Right? Seeing is believing. Hearing is believing. Well, eventually gets us in trouble. Okay? It perpetuates samsara. So the example Geshe-la had set us up with is when you press your eyes and you see two things, you say, that's my direct experience right now. So that is direct valid perception. And it's like, yes, it's your experience right now, but no, it's not direct, valid, non-conceptual experience because it's mistaken. It looks like there are two things happening because of the circumstance, but there's not two things there. So when we have all four of these factors, not because it's four, but because of what they bring to the definition, they have helped us narrow down our understanding of what it is we are defining. What do you mean by a direct, valid perception? Oh, it's a state of mind that's fresh and unerring, and simultaneously free of conceptualizations and unmistaken. Now, if we really work that out, it's like, oh, I see what they're talking about. Direct, valid perception. Okay? So Geshe-la gave this example. It is true that the definition of emptiness is the absence of self-existence to any existing thing. But that may not be enough in our definition to help the person we're talking with about it to really think it through. Like maybe they believe that emptiness is just a big black hole. And we say, oh, it's the absence of self-existence to all existing thing. And they say, yeah, that's another way of saying a big black hole. And we know that that's what they mean. And so we go, and it's not just a big black hole. And then hopefully they're going to go, well, why do you say that? Like it seems like a big black hole. If nothing has any old existence, there's nothing really there. That's just like those science black holes, you suck everything into itself and there's nothing. And it's like, yeah, but, right? And you can start this discussion of exploring how you would establish the existence of the big black hole if everything's gone. And maybe you'd talk to them for 20 years or so about it. So Geshe-la says, our use of definitions, we want to use them to disqualify dissimilar ideas and to address our other person's specific wrong ideas. And when we have those two tools in place for our defining of things, it makes defining things a really great tool for helping people look at their own experiences differently. Okay, so last thing that we have for this class is back to our discussion about reasons, right? Learning the principles of logic. we were learning about reasons that any old reason is a reason, but not any old reason is a good reason for what we're trying to prove. That reason has to be a reason where the three relationships hold. And then within reasons where the three relationships can hold, there are reasons by way of identity, reasons by way of cause and effect. But now we know to more properly say that effects and the causes from which they come. And then there's this reasons to reveal an absence. And reasons that reveal an absence, we learned, can be absences having to do with things that we can't perceive. Why do we have to prove their absence? We can't perceive them. And reasons to reveal absences having to do with things that we do perceive. Why do we prove an absence of something that we perceive? It's not absent there. There it is. Right? It's not whether or not the thing is there. It's something about the thing that we think is there that we're trying to reveal to ourselves or someone else is or isn't there. Whether we're talking about a thing that we perceive having qualities or not, or a thing that we can perceive having qualities or not. So of all the different reasons, this one's the hardest to understand and probably the one that's most significant to when we understand and can set about using it for ourselves will help our understanding of emptiness independent origination get deeper. So we had talked about the reasons to prove absences about things we can't perceive. And all I have left is this reasons to prove absences about things that is normally perceptible. Non-grun means appear possible, perceptible. It means perceptible. It means appear possible, but the word is perceptible. Mamikbe is not seen. The reason to reveal the not seen in something that's perceptible. Okay. So Geshe-la sort of jumps to the chase. He says, what we think we know about our world and how it works, most of it, we just assume that it works that way, that it is that way and it works that way. And then we act based on that assumption. And as a result, we make karma that perpetuates the suffering of our world as we are trying to stop that suffering. We're trying to get happier. And we do things that we think are going to get us and others happier. And because we misunderstand the relationships, our efforts fail. Maybe we get happy for a little while, but then we lose it. Maybe it goes sour from the get-go, and then we get mad and disappointed that it didn't work, right? Maybe it all goes great, and then we die. So that's samsara because we misunderstand. So we're trying to prove to ourselves more than anybody else that just because something appears to us in a certain way, that it has the qualities that we think it has. So who cares about the pen and the bicycle? We care about the angry yelling boss or, our loved one doing weird stuff. It's like we don't know whether or not any other given person than ourselves has had the direct perception of emptiness or not. We don't know whether they perceive themselves as a fully enlightened being emanating to us or not. We can't really know who or what that other being is, conscious being or inanimate, actually. But we think we do know, don't we? And this is what disqualifies us from Buddha paradise, Geshe-la says. We think we know the other person, as that suffering being that they appear to be. And so therefore, we don't see ourselves surrounded by enlightened beings. If we were perceiving a Buddha paradise, whether it was ours or somebody else's, we would see nothing but enlightened beings or high-level bodhisattvas there. Do you have to get in a spaceship and go past planet Xerxes to get there? No. You don't have to go anywhere. Our mind changes. So, as we learn to logic, we actually learn to become more skeptical about our perceptions. Helps us question reality without questioning reality such that we go, oh, so nothing exists at all. Right? So we're so carefully trained to recognize that our mind will go there. It's like, wow, if it doesn't exist the way I think, it must never not exist at all. If it's nothing but mental projections, that's like a movie. It's like a dream. Nothing matters because you wake up and it never really happened. It's like wrong conclusion from the glimpses of what's accurate, which is why we're studying logic, so that we can check when we're going off in the wrong direction because of our assumptions. So we want to grow this being skeptical about our experiences in a good way, in the sense of there's that angry yelling boss doing that thing again to me. Can I suspend my blaming them for my discomfort long enough to say, I don't really know what they're experiencing and what's on their mind. I do know their lack self-existence. And can that little glimpse into their lack of self-existence help me just get a little glimpse into maybe they're actually a fully enlightened being here to be the ripening of my karma so I can burn some crap off. In which case, thank you. How can I help? And change our reality in that moment. It'll only stay changed, for a short moment. But every time we do that, just by going, maybe they're an enlightened being, not saying they absolutely are, because no being absolutely is. Not even Buddha is absolutely Buddha. Buddha is empty of self-existence. Buddha is perpetuating their Buddhahood. So will we. We don't become Buddha once and for all. We become Buddha that are perpetuating our Buddha constantly, which is what emanations are helping with. So when we consider, oh, they're blank, it helps us consider a different response towards them. And that's where it helps us to plant different seeds. All right. So Geshe-la gives us a couple of examples of this using correct reasons to prove something, an absence regarding something that's perceptible to us. He says, let's consider a dark nighttime ocean. On its surface, there's no billowing smoke out there because there's no fire out there. And it's like, why do we bother? You're looking out in a dark nighttime ocean and sky. There's no fire there. I don't have to prove it to anybody. but maybe it looks like there's smoke there. There was a time at Diamond Mountain, there had been a fire close by, and it was scary because the firefighters set up on Diamond Mountain property to go to fight the fire. And if the wind had shifted, right, it would have come our way. And anyway, it didn't. And the campground host was there involved in all of that. And I don't know, a couple of weeks or a month later, the campground host calls us in the middle of the night. David, you've got to come. There's a fire somewhere. Why do you say that? Because the sky is filled with smoke. He looks out the window. He sees the Milky Way in all its amazing glory as it is at Diamond Mountain. And he goes, no, that's the Milky Way. She goes, I know fire smoke when I see it. There's fire. You've got to come. We've got to go find it. Okay. So, they go in the truck, they go looking for this fire, can't find it, comes back a couple hours later. It was the Milky Way in the sky that was so thick that it looked like smoke. It really did. You could see, right? But she was so sure it was smoke, and where there's smoke, there's fire, so we have to find it, protect Diamond Mountain. So it's not altogether a dumb argument to say smoke, so fire, so act to protect people. But if you can say, look out there, there's no smoke. So the fact that we're not seeing fire out there on the ocean is validated by not seeing smoke, as if we saw smoke, there would have to be fire out there on the ocean. But then maybe it would be true, right? Maybe there's a ship on fire that is past the horizon, but you can see the smoke. You would call the rescue. There must be a ship on fire out there. I can't see the fire, but I do see the smoke. Right? So it all is useful. This using reasons to prove things that are there that we can't see that way, proving things that aren't there, but we have indicators that they are there, and proving things that aren't there that we do see. Okay, anyway. Mostly, we're wanting to find ways to show ourselves those good reasons to prove the absence of the things that we perceive as having their own natures. We want to establish infallible reasons for ourselves to be able to recognize those things don't have those qualities from themselves the way they appear to. And all of this that we're learning are little pieces of the puzzle that help us change our thinking towards our experiences so that we can change our direct experience of our experiences so that we can cultivate the imprints in our minds such that things' true natures can be experienced by us directly. The most important things' true nature is our me, the thing that is our me. To experience that thing's true nature, its lack of self-existence, which reveals its presence. Okay. All right. That's why we are learning all this stuff. And that finishes this class. Sorry, I took 5 more minutes than I was supposed to. So park it all in the data bank. But then explore it, use it. One of these days we'll come back to learning the debate class. I don't know when we're going to do it, but we'll do it. And then we'll pull all this stuff out again and we'll use it, in our fun practice sessions. So remember that person that we wanted to be able to help. We've learned a lot, whether you think so or not, that we will use sooner or later to help them stop their suffering forever, really. And that's an extraordinary goodness. So please be happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy being. See how happy they are with you. Feel your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please stay close, to continue to guide you, help you, inspire you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. Their love, their compassion, their wisdom. It feels so good. We want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person, to share it with everyone you love, to share it with every existing being everywhere. See them all filled with loving kindness, filled with wisdom. And may it be so. All right. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Our next class will be July 17, Friday. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Chris.
I just wanted to answer Frank's question about conceptualization, which is, I think it gets defined in ACI 5, and it's all of the definitions are really circular. They're like quotes from the scriptures about, you see all this stuff, but really it's just concepts. And it's like conceptualization is making something from concepts. And so I couldn't find any actual clear definition that wasn't that kind of, the conceptual principle,
Yeah, I know. It uses the word, right?
Yeah,
You're not
it
allowed to
uses the
use the
word.
word in the definition of what you're defining, and they do it all the time. It's like, you're
Right.
not allowed.
Well, but
Yeah,
at least it doesn't, it's inclusive, right? So, because it's
right,
like, it's not using an explanation that nobody else can understand, but it's using the
right,
word. So it's like,
right.
but
Yeah,
the other thing I wanted to say was that I was last weekend I was somewhere and someone told me that nirvana is the state of being absent of emotions.
oh,
And I
yeah,
went, I'm listening to this and I'm like going, oh, now see, my training tells me that that's inaccurate, that it's the absence of, mental afflictions.
right.
And it just sort of seemed like a good example from what we're talking about now, about how
Yeah,
uh, definitions can be too fuzzy.
yeah.
And
Thank you.
yeah,
Perfect example. It makes me appreciate the details of our training. It's so extraordinary, really. Uh, yeah, thanks. Conceptualization means you take pieces of information and you come up with an identity and a story. That's conceptualization.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm stopping recording. Enjoy the 5 houses program if you're taking it.
Thank you for
Stop
teaching me,
recording.
Mama. Please stay.
My pleasure.